recording, so good to go whenever.
I can't start video. You control that.
You should be able to go to start video now. I need to remember to.
Okay.
There we go. All right, welcome to week 8 of the Academy. We've got 3 different topics we're going to cover today. We've got Julie and myself. We're going to cover customer service. We've got Bill Bolton on. He is going to talk about business insurance, and then Alex Vonderhaar, who's going to talk marketing. So,
digital marketing, not digital insurance, which is not a thing, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe Bill will tell us if it is, but just one of many mistakes that were made this week on my end for Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the email that came out on Sunday, I had mistakenly put in next week's speaker, Jimmy, instead of Alex. So apologies for that, but Alex is straight fire and y'all are going to love him. He's going to cover some great digital marketing stuff and it's going to be really super interactive. So I guess I need to change my view. Right. Okay. We don't have a presentation, right? So we just are going to talk through our talking points on customer service, but I just want to make sure from a view perspective, what does it look like? What's it going to look like on the recording? You can't hear you, Corey.
It should follow whoever's talking.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's do, I was going to ask one quick favor of Bill and Alex, if they can turn their cameras off, just so that there's no distraction for people that are watching. And welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get started with our exciting topics for tonight. So, but before we dive in, I was going to ask you, Corey, do you remember when we were working for Performance and we would travel all the time? We were on the road like 100%, and we spent like, I don't know, like a year in Santa Cruz, California.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, not only Santa Cruz. I mean, I was bouncing back between Santa Cruz, LA, Portland, basically commuting to the West Coast for like an entire year, which was awesome.
Yeah, and then we also spent a good amount of time at in Hickory, North Carolina, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Eric Church used to work at a country club in Hickory, North Carolina. So I had a very close brush with fame with Eric Church, but I didn't actually meet him. But you remember the Hilton in Scotts Valley?
I do.
Right outside of Santa Cruz?
I do, and I loved it until everybody else discovered it.
I know, it was your secret hiding spot, but what made it so cool once everybody discovered it was they had these like kind of like corner rooms that were these suites that were giant. It was like an 800 or 900 square foot like apartment, basically, these suites, and they would upgrade us for no reason.
Well, that's, I mean, you made good friends with the front desk girl who, like, she knew that we were coming into town, and I mean, we had to spend, there were a couple times where we had to spend multiple weeks there, where we were staying the weekend, and she would just upgrade us to suites. Kind of ridiculous, but it was nice having 2 rooms.
It was super nice having 2 rooms, and let's be real, I make friends with everybody wherever I go, but that was such great service. And then you know what else I always remember? I remember, and this is going to sound so mean, but do you remember Smash Face from the Courtyard Marriott in Hickory, North Carolina?
Yeah, the bartender who had the unfortunate nickname of Smash Face.
Oh, and did she love her some Corey Harris? Yeah, but she gave us free drinks all the time.
Well, and the nice thing was, I mean, no matter where we went, whether it was, Hickory, Santa Cruz, whatever, like, I mean, we became de facto regulars, and, that really drove where we went and spent our money. There was the Courtyard there in Hickory, but across the street was that Hilton Garden Inn, and we split time between both because, we'd walk in and everybody would, the bartenders would have our drinks made. They'd already have our food ordered, we didn't have to, yeah. And we weren't, there every day, but they knew enough about us that, these people are going to spend money.
I heard that the bartender at the Hilton Garden Inn in Hickory, North Carolina, still asks about us because some of our former teammates still go there, and they said they still ask about us, how we're doing. So that's those are great customer service experiences, right?
Yeah, and like I said, that's why we kept going back, because of the customer service.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about customer service and what that means, right? So from a you know, core values perspective, which is where I'd like to start, because I'll bring it all back to week 1, where we talked about the importance of core values for your business and building that foundation. Your customer service experience or mission, which we'll get into a little bit more later, should really encompass your core values of your company, right? You should be, or your core values should encompass or consider how you service your customers, what you want that experience to be like. Customer service, though, is a little bit like, earmuffs for anyone who might be easily offended, but customer service, sometimes it's easy to describe it as being a little bit like pornography. It's hard to define, but you know it when you have it. You could easily, I bet everyone sitting in here could think of a time when they had horrible customer service, or when they had mediocre customer service. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. And when they've had great customer service. And it's easy, it. The barometer is different for everybody, but everybody has those experiences where they can define them easily. So that's an interesting part of trying to figure out what your customer service model is, knowing that the experience is measured differently for everybody. So you kind of have to go out of the gates really strong with what you're doing. And why is customer service needed, right? So customer retention is a big piece for reviews and testimonials, especially when we live in a world of, online reviews. And we've had a number of clients or small business owners ask us, what do I do if we get a negative review? And we're kind of like, it's going to happen, because there's a lot of jerks in the world, right? But it will happen. But it's all about, customer service is all about how you make people feel, which I know for a fact Alex is going to hit on hard later when he talks about marketing and how you touch on feelings. So there'll be a nice bridge between our conversation and Alex's later. And customer service, really good customer service, gives you brand credibility. It helps to build up your brand and make brand awareness. Bad customer service does the same thing for you, only in reverse, right? It gives you brand awareness, but not the kind you want. And what does customer service mean for your business? It means ideally repeat customers. We talked to somebody the other day. In fact, we have a podcast coming out tomorrow where the guest, Shea Butler, told us that almost everybody that buys a knife from him becomes a repeat customer because of the quality of the product and because of the experience, which I think Corey's going to touch on a little bit later, because he's got some unique ways that he approaches customer service. And customer service is, if you have really good customer service, it's free advertising. If you just think about some of the models out there, everybody knows Nordstrom is known for customer service. And one of my favorite companies to talk about for customer service is First Form, which has some amazing customer service experiences and stories, which I'll tell you a little bit about later.
And one of the things that we want to definitely talk about is bad customer service. And it's not quite as true today with social media and the internet and all of that as it was 10 years ago. But you were more likely to tell people about a bad experience that you have than a good experience. And again, like I said, it's a little different because you can, like on Facebook and friend and do all that fun stuff. But I wanted to just go through like a quick story of terrible customer service that I had. This was about 10 years ago. Yeah, it was just a little over 10 years ago. I was traveling cross country with some friends moving back from Alaska back to the East Coast. And we did like this crazy road trip. I thought I had my Verizon account, my cell phone account set up for auto pay so that it would just, debit my account because I was going to be on the road for weeks and I didn't want to have to worry about paying bills or whatever. Well, I got a phone call couple weeks in, and I was literally in the middle of nowhere. And somehow I had service, barely had service. And they're like, yeah, you need to pay your bill, or we're going to shut off your service. And I was like, well, it's supposed to be on auto pay. They're like, well, there was an issue, whatever it was. I told them, I'm in the middle of the desert. I don't have access to the internet. This is 2009. I didn't have a smartphone. I've got my credit card. Let me just pay it right now. Guess what? They couldn't take payment over the phone. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to pay the bill? They're like, well, you need to go to an approved payment center, like a Verizon dealer or whatever. Where's the nearest one? San Diego. I'm in Nevada, and the nearest one that they had was in San Diego. So I told them as soon as I get to San Diego, because I was going that direction, oddly enough, moving from Alaska to the East Coast with a stop in San Diego. I told them, yeah, as soon as I get there, I'll make a payment. It'll be there. I'll be there in like 2 or 3 days. Please don't cut off my phone. I'm the only person who has a cell phone, etc. And they just made it super annoying for me to make that payment. And I got to San Diego. I found the dealer, and I walk in. Like, I called ahead of time. You accept payments? Yes. Okay, cool. I show up. I had to borrow somebody's bicycle because other people were using my car, whatever. I got to the store. I went to make my payment. Oh, we only accept cash for this. So then I had to go leave, find an ATM. Long story short, it was really, really hard to give somebody money, to give a company money. And that story is like burned in my head. And this is going to lead into customer retention. The only reason why I'm still a Verizon customer is we all know how annoying it is to switch, who your carrier is. And I mean, luckily for Verizon, they kind of, they had me bent over a barrel because I couldn't change who I was doing business with. But sure enough, if that was any other company, I would have left immediately. But Julie's going to talk a little bit about customer retention.
I am. And I'm going to also say that if Corey could still operate with just a flip phone, he would. And I think anybody who knows him knows that that's true. So I want to tell a quick story on the opposite side of customer retention for a positive experience where it's like, hey, you got a customer for life. And that's a First Form story, right? So First Form is supplements, right? So it's Andy Frisella's company, for anyone who doesn't know that, though most of the people on here I'm looking should know that. But anyway, they're supplements, and they're high quality products, and they're more expensive than most on the market, but that's because they put a lot of like solid quality ingredients into the product. So like no complaints about the price. I would pay it happily. And I do. My kitchen may or may not look like I'm a reseller, but I had ordered probably like $300 worth of product from them over the summer. And for whatever reason, anytime I order something from First Form, even though the address is correct, the good old USPS delivers it to somebody that lives a block over. I don't know why. And I'm pretty sure that place a block over might be a crack house. I don't know. So I make the order. They say it's delivered. I get notification right away from First Form that it's been delivered. I check my porch. It's not there. And I kind of wait it out, whatever, give it like a day or two. I contact First Form and I'm like, I didn't get this package. And so they asked me to wait like a day and then to check back with them. And the guy was super, super helpful. It was just over chat on, the good old internet. And I reached back out like a day later and said, I still don't have this package. It says it was delivered. And so he's like, we're going to go ahead and ship you out another package. I'm like, okay. So they overnighted me another package. And not only did they overnight me another package, but they doubled everything that I had ordered, because the USPS delivered my package to the wrong place. And then about 2 days later, the people who got my package brought it to my house. And so I called First Form and said, hey, this package, it turned up. So let me bill me for what you sent me. Cause I really I'm not trying to get something for free. And they were like, no, this is totally on us. Like, you should have gotten your package, and we are, we're so sorry you had a bad experience. So it wasn't even their bad experience, and they covered it, and they do, they just go above and beyond for customer service. I think we're probably not that far off from First Form being known as the company that is known best for solid, like really great customer service. But retention from your customers with your customers is so important. So if you've got that bad experience, and Corey's right, switching your cell phone provider totally blows. I've done it once in like 15 years. I don't ever want to do it again. It's just, it sucks. But so keeping your customers is far cheaper than trying to acquire new ones. So if you want to keep your customers, one of the easiest ways you can do it is with solid customer service. A lot of people, or there might be this notion that if you have cheaper products that people will stay with you, but the reality is cheaper doesn't mean better. And if you have cheap products and you have crappy service, good luck keeping your customers. People are going to buy from you once and then they're going to bounce, and you're going to have to find another way to to get customers. And customer acquisition costs, they can be really high because that includes your marketing costs and what you're paying your sales team and everything that goes into it. So just keep that in mind for why customer service is so important. And customer retention starts with the customer experience. You want to make sure that your customers every step of the way, even if it's a transactional process, are having a good experience. So whatever it is that you're selling or that you're doing, all those touch points with your customers need to be looked at to make sure the customer has the best possible experience to keep them, to retain them.
And in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of go through these, but we've got some interesting stats for you. Some data that came from a U.S. News and World Report in 2019. Obviously, what's going on now with the pandemic and everything, these numbers aren't as correct, but I would assume it kind of stays the same, and that it just really reinforces the value of customer service. But the average American business lost 15% of its customer like year over year, according to the report. And then 68% of customers who leave, they take their business to take their business to a competitor because of poor or indifferent service. So it's nothing to do with the product. It's just they had a bad experience. And 82% go someplace else, specifically because customer service is a problem. And then the last stat that I have, which came from a Forbes article, same time about last year, said that 60 to 80% of customers who say they're satisfied with the service or product aren't repeat customers. So that's people saying, hey, yeah, it was good. I'm probably not going to buy from them again. I mean, that's crazy. And if you're comparing, apples to apples in terms of I sell the same product that Julie does or whatever it is, it's that customer service that really sets you apart from your competitors.
Yep. So one of the things that you can do is to develop a customer service mission statement, much like you have a mission statement for your business. How do you want your customers to feel when they do business with you, right? What is that experience that you want them to have? And if you have employees, it's really important that all of your employees are also on the same page and understand what your customer service mission is and how you want the customer to feel whenever they're interacting with you or anyone in your business.
And you can't just talk the talk. You need to walk the walk as well. So your attitude, how you deal with your employees, your company culture, all of that really feeds into your customer service. Julie already kind of talked about core values, and I'm just going to mention it again quickly. I mean, you need to make sure that everybody in your organization, lives and breathes by what's important to you, and that you're true to that. And you also want to make sure that it fits your brand. So for instance, Monster energy drinks, their advertising model, they're extreme and extreme sports and whatever else. And that the way that they interact with other businesses on social media, with their customers on social media, whatever it is, it fits their brand. They're a little edgy. They're actually, kind of dickish. Excuse the French there, but they can be kind of jerks and how they respond and all of that, but it fits the model. Like you're like, that's what I would expect from Monster. But Julian mentioned Shea Butler knives, which I'm going to talk about now. They've got an interesting approach to their customer service model. So they've got these high quality, high end knives,
But when you purchase a knife from their website, there's a box that you check that says, I will not contact, Shea Butler Knives. I will not contact the company to ask about the status of my order. And that's not because they don't provide great service. They do. They go above and beyond and a little too far, in my opinion, in some areas. But they want to be upfront that you'll get your knife when you get your knife, and they'll keep you up to date on the order status and all of that. But they're busy. They've got other things going on, and that they just want you to know that contacting the business isn't going to help move anything, along quicker. Not to say that they haven't made exceptions to the rule, and they're great. They're nice people, but for the most part, like, that's who they are. And they just want to let you know that, look, we're busy. We'll get you your knife. We promise, but it's not, it's going to come in the order in which it was received.
Yes. And if you tune into the podcast tomorrow, you can hear the other side of the story of how they offer great customer service, because that is included in the podcast, but I'll save that story for then. So back to everyone in your company needing to understand what the mission statement is and for customer service, and that's everybody. So if you've got consultants that are working for you, or customer contractors, employees, part-time employees, whatever it is, everyone should understand how it is that you want customers to feel, because then as they're working with you or for you, they can help you deliver on that, right? So if you're going to hire a marketing consultant, which perfect example, we used Alex in the past for some marketing stuff. Alex understood what our mission was with our clients and how we wanted them to feel as we were working with them. And it was how he helped us to build a strategy around marketing. And Nicole, who all of you know, does our social marketing, our social media content. She pushes everything out for us. Most people, if you didn't know that, wouldn't know, because she's so aware and in tune with how we want our customers and our clients to feel, that it just sounds like it's coming from either me or Corey. Though if you know Corey, you know it's not him, because he's not on social media. And a really good example of like a brick and mortar business, when we talked at the beginning about being out in Santa Cruz and traveling so long, in a former company we worked for, one of the client site that we worked at, a food service distribution company. Their model was everything was built on customer service. So everybody didn't matter if you worked in the warehouse, if you drove a truck, if you were in procurement, sales, finance, it didn't matter what your role was. You knew what the customer service mission was, and everybody acted on that mission. It was really nice to see that in play. One of the other things I want to touch on real quick, and I'm kind of hoping that Alex goes into this a little bit deeper later when he's talking. If he doesn't, we can circle back to it, but this might be a new term for some of you, is that ideal customer avatar. So if you have an ideal customer avatar built out, then it's easy to identify how you want to leverage customer service against who your ideal customer is. So there's a real benefit to being able to marry the two together to be able to deliver high quality customer service.
And the key to delivering that high quality customer service is all about coaching your employees, building out a training program, being clear about your expectations, guidelines, etc. And it's like with the training program, it needs to reflect what your business really is. And so that's, it could be bonuses. It could be, they get ranked, and that's put in part of their annual feedback, whatever it is, like their annual review is what I'm looking for. So like, you want to just make it clear, and then make sure that everybody knows what's expected of them. And one great way to do that is just empower your employees to fix problems without, they don't have to jump through hoops and ask 18 different managers or whatever. Just fix the problem. So for instance, I was in Boulder not too long ago, and went into this restaurant, busy place, sat down, finally got seated. A couple minutes go by, nobody came by to talk to us. And all of a sudden, this waitress shows up, and she starts chatting us up, talks about the beers, et cetera. And then, takes her order for beers. And she's like, yeah, don't worry, this one's on the house. Your server's going to be right with you. The entire time we thought we were talking to our server, when we in fact were just talking to a server who saw us, knew that we needed, to some sort of service, whatever it was, just, that touch point, and then bought us beers. It doesn't cost the business a ton of money to do that, but it made a huge impression on my entire experience of being in that restaurant. And you also want to make sure, and like, I'm going to mention restaurants again, because that's what a large part of my background is in, but you want to make sure that, like, for instance, when I was managing restaurants, like, basically, if you're on the clock, if you're in the building, regardless of your job, the customers always come first. So, I would train the dishwashers, the bussers, everybody. Like, if a customer comes to you, if they look confused, if they need help, whatever it is, address them. Even if you don't know the answer, I would tell them, just say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but let me find someone who can help you. So that customer at least knows that they've been acknowledged. And then obviously go find that person who can help that customer.
And one of the easiest things you can do is just simply thank people for their business. You can do that a lot of different ways. One of the best is handwritten thank you notes, but it doesn't have to be anything that serious. But thanking people for their business is a huge, easy win for you to get.
And the last thing that we're going to talk about is just, customer touch points, the customer service as it relates to process. And this is just going to be like a teaser for the process conversation that we're going to have next week. But while you're going through the whole customer service thing, whether you're a solopreneur, you have a team of 10, whatever it is, you want to just think about the end-to-end processes and everywhere that a customer is, like, there's an interaction with the customer. Those touch points should be reviewed and optimized to make sure that you have the best possible experience ever. Or that you can offer. So you want to look at things like phone calls, emails, billing, status reports, shipping, receiving, everything that a customer sees, anything that's external, you want to make sure is the best. And you want to just see how they're treated. So like what Julie was talking about with that company in Santa Cruz, the warehouse workers, the accounting, like, everybody knew that, like, what they did and how it affected the customers. And then beyond there, you want to go into things that might not directly impact the customer experience, but can add or improve the experience later. So when you start documenting your end-to-end processes for the review, you want to see where it is that you can, you want to improve your business overall, but the return customers, like that customer retention is so critical. So, like, for example, if you have some sort of a warehouse and you have a receiving process that isn't great, it could lead to issues with customers fulfilling orders for customers, or whoever does your purchasing could probably, they might be purchasing more than they need to because they know that you're going to have an issue receiving whatever it is. So you have more in stock than you really need to. And improving this could allow for you to become more profitable, have more working capital. So, that's going to give you more money to pay your employees, bonus employees, give customers offers, whatever it is. And it's just kind of like a circular thing where, as soon as you start improving customer service, you're going to increase sales, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, and this is just kind of, like I said, the teaser, just make sure you include your whole team in the review, and you want to listen for pain points. And so that's when I say team, it's really all your people. So not only do you want feedback from your customers and following up on that, but look into your vendors, your employees, contractors, anybody who interacts with your business, and just understand what it is that they don't like about your business. And you don't necessarily have to take it all into consideration, because what my opinion is, I might be the, exception to the rule. Everybody else loves it. And I'm just that person that, likes to just give everybody negative feedback. So just take it into, listen for it, but again, you don't need to take it all into consideration. And that is customer service. So we've got Bill up next on insurance. Bill, over to you.
Happy New Year, everybody. Corey and Julie, thank you for having me on today. My name is Bill Bolton. I'm the president of Dba Insurance. And I am going to start my slideshow. Hopefully I can share the screen correctly. We tried doing this last night, and
Yeah, we did it twice last night, so see if you can remember.
still managed to mess it up. Oh, there we go. All right. So yeah, just a little bit about me. Again, I am the president of BB Insurance. I've been practicing commercial insurance, strictly commercial insurance. So all I do is insure businesses. I've been doing it for about 15 years. Been around the block a few times. There's several different agencies that I've worked for, some very large national brokerages to small regional ones, and finally started my own. Love my family. I love dogs. There'll be some doggy pictures here later on. Do play music. I used to play rugby. Now I coach my son's rugby team. I am involved in a podcast. Some of you out there are familiar with it. And I'm a Hokie. I bleed maroon and orange. And as I continue with this, I want to make sure that everybody understands that what I'm about to go through is at a 50,000 foot level. And I cannot switch my pages. Here we go. So these are the topics we're going to go over today. But again, this is a very high level conversation. A lot of the topics that we're going to go over, we can get really into the weeds. It can get very confusing. We're not going to do that today. I'm going to give you some very important basics. And that's the first topic right there, just basic insurance policies. We're going to talk about some other policies that you may want to look at. And it always depends. And that's going to be the answer for a lot of the questions people have. Everything we talk about is going to be circumstantial. So you may have a question. I probably have an answer, but it's always going to start with it depends. There's always tons of circumstances that go into how you're underwritten, what you're going to pay for your insurance. When it comes to claims, everything is circumstantial. So it depends is going to come up a lot. So again, high level conversation. Not everything is required by contract. We're going to touch on that because the basic insurance needs, they typically are contractual. The other ones may or may not be. What's the purpose of insurance? I thought about leaving that at the very top of the list. I want to move it down because I wanted to give you, some really good examples of what different insurance policies are and what they are to do, and then ask that question. And then we're going to go through some class rating. That's, how your policies are actually underwritten, and then how to select the correct insurance agent or broker. I'm going to use the word broker, but they're, for the sake of this conversation, agent and broker are interchangeable. And then, of course, how to navigate the insurance marketplace, how to select the correct carrier. So we're going to cover a lot, but again, 50,000 foot level. So basic insurance requirements. These are going to be the items that typically are going to be required by contract. And if you haven't seen one of these right here, don't try to read this thing. I know it's very tiny print, but this is a certificate of liability insurance. This is the evidence that you actually have insurance. So the first one is going to be general liability. And guys, I know this is the sexiest topic ever. We're going to have some fun at some point, I promise. But so commercial general liability, that is basically third-party damages. So if you hurt somebody's body or damage their property and they sue you, this is where you would have money for that. This has nothing to do with your employees. This has nothing to do with your property. We're going to get to that. This is simply third party. So people that are completely outside of your company altogether, if you injure them in some way, shape, or form, and they sue you, this is the bucket of money, so to speak, where you would get that, at your protection from. This includes defense costs as well. So if you are sued, this would pay for your attorney. And then if there are any damages thereafter, it pays for those damages as well, up to whatever the limit is that you select. Products completed operations is part of this. And I always point that one out because a lot of times this is something overlooked. What this covers, and let me highlight this right here. The completed operation. So the best example I can give you is if you're building houses, you complete the house, 2 years later, the house falls down and kills an entire family. That's a completed operation. If this were to be excluded on your policy, and this does happen a lot, you would have no insurance. So just something to look out for. Make sure that's included. Commercial auto is pretty self-explanatory. That's your vehicles, if you own any. And if you don't, this is something else you absolutely need to look out for right here. Hired and non-owned auto. It's a very simple add-on to any policy. It typically costs a couple $100 to maybe $500 a year. Usually a little bit less than that. However, what this does is protects you against your employees or anybody that's doing any work on your behalf. If they were to go out in their car and hit a bus full of nuns and there's a giant accident, somebody dies, whatever have you, you can be sued for that. And any attorney is going to look for whoever's got the deepest pockets, whoever they deem to have the deepest pockets. So this is what the protection is: hired and non-owned auto. So if there's a vehicle that's doing work on your behalf and you don't own it, you can still be sued if something happens in that vehicle. Commercial property, again, pretty self-explanatory. That's your stuff. So any of the things that you have, whether it be, pens, paper, computers, phones, printers, all the way up to large equipment, if it's more of a contracting sort of an operation, property. Inland marine, that's a form of property that's for larger equipment. And we're not going to get too far into that again. And there's varying levels we can go through. Workers' compensation, obviously, that's to protect your employees. If they get injured, they get paid. There's really two different parts. There's actually workers' compensation, and that's really an unlimited amount of money, although everybody settles. And then there's employer's liability. So if somebody gets injured and they collect workers' comp, they cannot sue you at that point. They're already being paid. They're being made whole. If they feel that you are so negligent that they have the right to sue you, at that point, you do have a limit to that policy, and that's under employer's liability. There are two parts to this: workers' comp and employer's liability. This is all statutory. This is the only commoditized piece of insurance that you're going to buy, because it's all run by each state. It's always the same. This is the only commodity within insurance. Nothing else is. And the magic word here is remuneration. We're going to get into that. People try to 1099 employees all the time and say it's not really an employee because they're a contractor, they're a subcontractor, or 1099. Doesn't matter. At least in my state, in the state of Virginia, that's still considered an employee. So the word payroll doesn't matter, and that's how it's rated. The magic word is remuneration. What if you're giving them anything, they are an employee. And then commercial umbrella, basically all this does, it adds an extra layer of $1 million to whatever the limit is you select. That'll ride on top of or add to your workers' comp, commercial auto, general liability. Property it won't cover because you can't insure a pen for $1 million. Here are the crucial policies that I mentioned. Again, these are not going to be the items required by contract. Typically not, anyways. Sometimes they are, depending on the operation. And I'm going to jump right down here into this one because this is something that absolutely every employer needs. If you have any employees at all, this is something that has to be on your policy. Employment practices liability. And here's a fun little joke. What this does is protects you from sexual harassment, age discrimination, wrongful termination, retaliation. So if you have an employee that feels that they've been wronged in some way, shape, or form, they can sue you. Whether it's frivolous or not, it's probably going to go to court. And the number of EEOC claims, and that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the number of claims only goes up every year. There was a small dip last year, but the numbers haven't come out this year. I'm sure they're going to explode. There's a little tiny graph over here. The number only increases. Employees feel entitled, and they should be, but they feel entitled. And if they feel that they've been wronged, they do sue. This is your protection for that. Make sure you have this. I'm going to go back up to the top real quick. Professional liability, otherwise known as errors and omissions. Again, not going to be required by contract, but it's extremely important to have. If you have any professional service at all, that is typically where you're going to be sued. I carry it. Most people that have a professional service carry it. They will carry it as well. It's a little more expensive, but I mean, myself personally, I mean, I'm probably not going to break anybody's leg in the course of doing my business. If I make an error in admission, that's usually where a lawsuit would come up. This is my most important level of protection. Business income and extra expense. This has been a giant issue over the entire COVID-19 fiasco we're facing. Businesses were shut down. And because there are so many exclusions in the way policies are currently written for anything pandemic or, illness related, nobody had any insurance for this. There may be some changes about that. But if your business is shut down for a covered cause of loss, something that, maybe a fire, lightning, whatever have you, a covered cause, and your business is shut down for whatever period of time, you can actually get, once you substantiate the amount of money that you would normally get, you can have that money returned to you by the insurance carrier. Typically a 12-month period of time. You could select how long of a period. So if you're shut down for 6 months, they'll give you 6 months of your receipts. I don't want to get too deep into this as well, but if you do rely on other properties to complete something, let's say that you make widgets, and there's one company that creates a certain part that you need, and that's the only company that can do it. And if they get, burned down and you can't get that part, you can actually claim on their loss for your business income. And that's a huge one if that's something that, if you're involved with. If not, again, not going to be that crucial. Cyber liability, huge issue. Everybody needs it. I carry mine. It's just a matter of time before you get hacked. I've got clients on a regular basis that, there's always some tricky way that people are getting in. Social engineering, that's why I wrote this down right here. It's one of the ones that a lot of times is not included on cyber, but nowadays it's starting to trickle in. The guys and gals that are hacking into people, they're getting extremely creative. Just if you have the extra coin, and I know if you're starting off, it's hard because, cash flow is, a huge issue. It was for me when I was starting. Get it as soon as you can, because it is a matter of time before somebody hacks into your system. And small businesses are targets as well. It's easier to get into a small business than it is into a larger business. And if they can get through somebody's system, they'll, go directly upstream to a bigger one if they can. And management liability, again, these are not other items that I want to hit too hard on. Directors and officers, this is really once you grow in size and you have a board of directors, something like that, these are the really crazy, where the hell did that come from sort of claims. The one that I use all the time is, it wasn't one of my clients. It was a company I was working for. One of their clients, it was a large manufacturing company. They manufactured laboratory equipment. Well, the order went out. Somebody was injured by the equipment. It sounded like it would be a product. Remember, I mentioned product completed operations. It sounded like a product claim. It would have been under GL. It turns out that the HR director, the person that hired the final inspector, didn't realize that they had hired somebody that was blind. So that became a directors and officers claim, because it was actually the director of HR that screwed something up, not the actual product itself. So those, again, once you grow at some point, that's something you're going to want to look at. The other ones we're not going to spend any more time on. Again, these are crucial policies that can save your companies, but not required by contract. Why isn't everything required by contract? The simple answer is your clients only care about their liability. By the way, you should too. I mean, it's, if you hire somebody or, enter into a contract with a subcontractor, you should worry about your liability as well. This is going to be a very, very commonplace. One of the very first slides I mentioned a certificate of insurance. At some point, if you haven't seen one, you will, and somebody is going to require one when you enter into a contract, and they're going to want you to add them as an additional insured. That means they have access to your policy. So they're going to want to know, they want access to your auto, GL, umbrella, workers' comp. They don't care about your property. They don't care about your professional liability. They don't care, these other items that, like I said, those crucial policies that are somewhat optional, they're not going to request those most of the time. Cyber liability, I've seen a few times. It's becoming more commonplace, but most companies, most contracts are not going to require those because they're worried about their own interests. Again, so, I mentioned, additional insured. So what that means is if you do hire a subcontractor, not necessarily a vendor so much, but a subcontractor, somebody's performing work on your behalf, make sure they have insurance. Do not let them step foot on your job site. Do not let them type anything. Do not let them perform work unless they have insurance and you've gotten proof of it, a certificate of insurance, and that you've been added as an additional insured. That means that you are on their policy as well as they are. I can't stress that enough. I've seen nightmares happen where they have, somebody has a subcontractor. They didn't require them to have insurance, didn't require them to do anything at all. They messed something up really horribly on a job. Guess whose fault that is? The person that hired them. They're the ones that are going to be sued. All right. So what's the purpose of insurance? Catastrophic loss. And I want you to keep that in mind. The other one is indemnification. But, indemnification is just to make one whole. So you're not going to profit off of an insurance claim. Some people do, but that's a mistake. The whole purpose is to get back what you have lost. And the main reason that insurance was created, at Lloyd's hundreds of years ago in London, it was for catastrophic loss. If somebody's boat went down, somebody's ship went down, they were completely out of business. What do? They all pool money. So if a boat goes down, we can repay, we'll build you a new one so you can continue going, but everybody's going to chip in. It's still the same principle today. Yes, you can make small claims on insurance. That's not the purpose of it. The whole purpose is if you have that holy crap moment and you've got $1 million, $2 million lawsuit on your hands that will completely ruin your company altogether, that is the purpose of buying something like this, buying any insurance at all. And I hear this all the time. This is one of the taglines here at the bottom. I hear, we've been in business for 20 years. That's never happened. It's never going to happen. Bullshit. The past is only one possible outcome of the future. And it's really hard to disagree with. Because of, you've had a clean history doesn't mean something bad isn't going to happen in the future. Make sure that you have all of these things in place ahead of time. Because if, you don't want to be up the creek without a paddle. And this is something I've seen a lot of times too. Nah, we're fine. I'm not worried about that. And then something comes back to bite them. All right. So, and again, I want you to keep this, catastrophic loss in mind, because that's really where we're going to head from here on out. So market selection, one of the things that I really try to make clear to everybody that I talk to, is that insurance is like any other market. It's like the stock market. It's like the price of food. It's like the price of oil. It's like the price of any other thing that you would purchase. There's ups and downs. There's hard markets and there's soft markets. Soft market means that rates are going down. And historically, over the past 10 years, they have been going down each and every single quarter. That's starting to change. So it's becoming a hard market. Right here, this is from, an independent company called Market Scout, and they release this every single quarter. So the most recent quarter, we're seeing an average of 6.25% increase in rate. So if your insurance premiums are going up, this is one of the reasons. The other thing is, if there's something you're thinking about buying, buy it now, because it's going to be more expensive later. Not by much, but it will be more expensive. The increase has actually gotten worse because Q2 of 2020, it was 4.8% increase. So it's speeding up. The market's getting harder at a faster rate. So, and I don't see any slowing down in that. The last real hard market was right after 9/11. I mean, we had 30 to 40% increases on a quarterly basis for about a year and a half. And that can hurt. But I mean, this is, again, something to be aware of. And yes, there are market fluctuations. I get calls from people all the time saying, I'm paying too much for insurance. Why do you think that? What led you to that conclusion? Well, I just think I am. So they compare themselves to other companies, and you can't do that either, because your company, again, everything is circumstantial. You cannot compare yourself to another company. They may have a better loss history or a worse loss history. They may have, their revenues may be the same, but their operations may be completely different. You can't compare yourself to another company. Keep in mind that markets do fluctuate. There are ups and downs. Is it possible to save people money on a regular basis? Yeah, there's a million different carriers out there. I could save people money right now, but you don't want to buy a piece of crap. It's actually, I'm going to take this back to about 15 minutes into this conversation. Julie said something that I like, and we're going to go back into this in a moment, but cheaper doesn't mean better. It doesn't. Sometimes in insurance, it does. Usually not, but it does happen. I myself, I can provide people a very inexpensive policy. I guarantee you they're not going to want it. And it'd be a conflict of interest and extremely unethical for me to do it. There are people out there that will, and all they're doing is trying to save somebody a buck. It's not the best way to go about doing this. This is an extremely important piece of your business infrastructure. It's no different than, finding the right CPA or finding the right attorney. This is something that could save your butt. So cheaper doesn't mean better. So we're going to go into something a little bit more nitty gritty. So insurance class rating and premium calculation. And again, this is going to be a very basic example of this. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. So there's something called a rating basis. How do the insurance carriers actually quantify how much you should be spending on an annual basis for your insurance? Number one, it's your operation. You're going to fit into a certain class code. That's for general liability, professional liability. Any insurance product, any insurance policy that you purchase, you're going to fit into a certain class code. At that point, they have to quantify it somehow. So we'll start with GL, general liability. It's usually going to be gross annual revenue. That's how they quantify it. So if your revenue is $1 million a year, that's what they're going to use to rate how much you're going to pay. If your annual revenue, and these are net or gross numbers. If your annual revenue is 20 million, you're going to pay more than the company that is doing $1 million a year. And the reasoning behind that is the more you're doing, the more exposure you have, the more likely you are to be sued or to have some sort of a claim. Workers' comp, this is always annual remuneration. Remember, that's the magic word, not payroll, remuneration. If you're giving somebody something, they are considered an employee, and that's the number they're looking for. So even if you throw a 1099 on somebody, they're still an employee. You need to report those numbers because they will do an audit. They'll come back. You got to pay for it no matter what. Auto, it's, a combination of what what vehicle you're driving and the actual drivers. They always check MVRs. It's motor vehicle records, which, by the way, check your employees' MVRs before you put somebody behind the wheel. Check them. I mean, you could do it, through the DMV. I mean, there's certain avenues I can go through to check those as well. Make sure they're done, because you don't want to have somebody that's got a DUI or it has a suspended license driving on your behalf. It's a recipe for disaster. Professional liability and directors and officers insurance. Again, these are those crucial policies that are not required by contract. These get a lot more in depth, because when you're insuring somebody's professional service, or again, directors and officers, the management level, sort of employees, they're going to ask a lot more questions. They want to know about your professional experience. Revenue it's driven by revenue. Typically, they're going to want to look at resumes. They're going to check financial strength. Specifically for directors and officers, they are going to ask for, a P&L statement, a balance sheet, something like that. And they do check credit. So the rating basis for those is much more in depth. The application process is much more in depth. And then there's something called composite rating. So I mentioned at the very beginning of this page that general liability is usually based off of gross annual revenue. There's other ways to look at it. That's called composite rating. So let's say you're a restaurant. I could base it, what you're going to pay off of your annual revenue. Or if you're a really small restaurant, you have a small footprint. There's ways to base it off of your public square footage. So if you're selling, $200 bottles of wine and you're doing really fancy plated dinners and you got a really tiny restaurant, your revenues might be extremely high. But if I base it off of your square footage, I can actually bring that premium down that way. Composite rating can be used in many different ways. If you're, again, go back to selling widgets, number of units sold. There's ways to negotiate with the carriers to change what that rating basis is. They have to agree to it, and a lot of times they will, but to change it so that it's more cost effective for you to get basically the same kind of a policy, and bring costs down. So composite rating can be fun, and I like negotiating with carriers. So that's a fun part for me. If you haven't noticed, I'm an insurance nerd. So let me give you a quick example of how premiums are calculated, and this one is specific to workers' compensation. It starts off rating basis, gross annual payroll or remuneration. So I'm going to use really easy numbers on here. So we're going to start off payroll is $100,000 annually. The workers' comp class code, and there's thousands of class codes. They're all rated differently, and every carrier has their own rating as well. So they all have to file them with the state, but depending on what your operation is, one carrier may be better than another. And we're going to go into that here in a moment. For this one, we're going to use clerical, which is by far one of the more inexpensive class codes, because if you're sitting behind a desk 8 hours a day, the chances of you breaking your leg or your arm or getting into some serious accident are very low. Hence, the amount that you pay for it is very low. What I used here is 15 cents per $100 of remuneration, which is exactly how they would do it. The clerical code is anywhere between 12 cents to 18 cents. It's extremely inexpensive per $100. So simple calculation, you take your $100,000, it's divided by the $100. You have a total of 1,000 here. You multiply that by whatever that rate is, 15 cents. That'll spit out what your premium is. Now, again, higher rated class codes, you're going to pay more. So if you're working in a warehouse, the class code is probably going to be somewhere between $2 and $5 per 100. I had a client, they were climbing up cell phone towers to work on antenna. That rate was somewhere around $19 per $100. I mean, they're paying through the nose for their workers' comp policy. It was crazy. So it's going to be, exactly, what your class actually is and what you're actually paying is what's going to determine what your premium is. Now, there are a lot of additional factors. There's, and also specific to workers' comp, there are modification factors. So there's experience mods, there's schedule mods, which is the human element. They'll look at losses. So that premium is where they start, and it can go up and down from there. If you're performing really well, you have very low losses, that number would go down. If you're performing poorly, that number is going to go up. And the human element of this, and there's a few more things we're going to talk about with the human element. Underwriters, they make determinations as to how much or how little you're going to pay based off of how they feel. So when you are looking for an agent, make sure you have one that knows how to negotiate with the carriers, that has good relationships with them, basically knows what they're doing. So there is a human element whenever determinations are made. It's not 100% science. Most of it is, but look out for that. Market selection and navigation. And this is also broker selection. first and foremost, price is only one factor. It is a factor, and that's the transactional part of it. Yes, it is a factor, but policies are contracts. This is something I talk about all the time. I could do a 2-hour class on this alone. They are contracts. They are unilateral contracts that are set up by the insurance carrier. And the first thing they hand you is going to be written to be in their best interest, not yours. So make sure when you are working with an agent or broker that you are working with somebody that can change things within the policy with the companies you're working with. Of course, find a broker that you trust. And this is all back to broker selection. This is one of the most crucial things I can tell you right now. Whenever you are trying to work with the correct agent or broker, do not bid your company's insurance with more than one broker. Don't do it. You end up shooting yourself in the foot. And this goes back to the human element. I'm going to jump into this example right here before I go down to these other couple of items. What happens when you select more than one broker? And that's, I wouldn't even call it traditional, but there's a lot of people that believe, a lot of business owners that believe that if they get 4, 5, 6 different agents to go out and bid their insurance, that they're going to get the best deal. It's not the way it works. Number one, human element. If I call my underwriters and say, hey guys, I have full control of this account. I'm the only one working on it. You're not competing against other agents. You're only competing against other insurance carriers. Those underwriters are going to work a whole lot harder on that. I guarantee you. If they know that there's way too many cooks in the kitchen, that submission is going at the bottom of the pile. I guarantee you. Pick one person you can work with. I'm not saying you have to stay with them forever, but work with one person. Here's one of the biggest issues that you face when you work with multiple different brokers. And these are all I randomly spit out a bunch of different carrier names. So broker A goes to Travelers, Hartford, Cincinnati. Broker B goes to CNA, Zurich, and Selective. Broker C goes to Chubb, Hiscox, and Donegal. Broker D goes to Utica, Grange, and Liberty. Now, you as the insurance buyer, you don't know the difference between those carriers. You don't know if they are the correct ones for your type of operation. You don't know what their rating structure is. You don't know what the exclusions are in the policy. You could have that completed operations thing, the GL portion that I talked about right at the beginning, that could be removed from it. You could have a worthless policy. So what are you going to do as the insurance buyer? 99% of the time, you're going to go to the very cheapest one. And you have no idea what you're buying. It happens all the time. Work with one person that knows how to navigate the entire market, that has access to the entire market, not just one or two carriers. You need to work with somebody that has access to every carrier they possibly can get their hands on. And they need to know your business. They need to understand your operation, exactly how it applies to the insurance that you're buying, and how it applies to the contracts that you're entering into. Work with somebody that understands your industry. Extremely important. So there's thousands of insurance carriers out there, and each one does have their own appetite. And that's kind of touching on what I was saying here. The insurance buyer, I've rarely run into somebody that actually knows what carriers are going to be the correct fit for their particular industry. I mean, that's my job to know that. You make sure that when you are selecting the right carrier, that it is, and this is up to your broker to have that discussion with you, that the carrier you're working with is in your marketplace. For example, so I can already see right here on broker C, there's an issue. Donegal, they're great for really small blue collar sort of exposures, sort of companies. So if you're fabricating granite, or if you are fixing up bathrooms or kitchens or something like that, Donegal would be a good fit. Chubb, on the other hand, they love technology. They love government contracting. They love stuff like that, and Donegal doesn't. So those two companies, there's no reason for you to be looking at either one of those. Your broker should be able to help you out with that. Each carrier has their own appetite. There's certain things they like and certain things they don't. And I mentioned this before. This is a very important part of your company's infrastructure. It's again, it's no different than any other professional service that you're gonna spend money on. So make sure you do spend the time to, have conversations with quality. I mean, start conversations with different brokers before you make your selection, but make sure you're comfortable with their ability to protect you. And not just going to save you money. That's part of their job too. Don't get me wrong, but that is not the most important thing. Oops. And well, we can get into claims. How am I doing on time, Corey?
You're running a little long. If you could wrap it up.
Done.
All right.
And there's my doggies.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. And if anybody has any questions out there, feel free to drop them in the Q&A so that we can talk. We can nerd out more on insurance with Bill.
Hopefully I didn't have anybody fall asleep on me there. I know it's not the sexiest thing out there.
I've got a bunch of questions, but I'm going to save it for the end, obviously, for the Q&A.
Okay.
So up next, we've got, thank you, Bill. We've got Alex. So Alex, you are up on your presentation.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. And for all my Buckeye fans out there, can I get an OH?
No.
I know you're out there.
No.
I know you're out there. Come on now. All right. I am Alex Vonderhart. Like Julie and Corey said, I run a marketing agency. And it's not just a normal marketing agency that just runs Facebook and Google ads for you. We're actually a neuromarketing agency. So we take a look at all the psychology and neuroscience principles that are within marketing and advertising, consumer behavior, the way we interact with our phones and desktop computers, laptops, all the technology. And we look at that through a lens called neuromarketing. So what I'm going to cover today isn't really super sciencey or technical. We're going to get into the foundations of good social media, which is absolutely what I love to cover. I love giving actionable basics that we can take on a daily basis that are going to impact your business. So I dropped Julie a link inside of Facebook so that way she can share this out with you guys later. But we developed a template a while ago. I don't do any type of like fancy presentations. It's just not who I am. But I do love me a good Excel sheet. And I'll tell you what, these things have saved my life more than once. So let's get this thing up. Pop that over. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Awesome. So working with over 150 businesses in the last 4.5, 5 years, one of the biggest complaints that I hear all the time is I don't know what to post. I don't know how to post. I don't know when to post. When's the algorithm going to be right? And at the basics of it, what we're getting at is we need to understand how to create a good story. We need to understand how to leverage our social media content to achieve the goals that we want. Is it more publicity? Is it more brand awareness? Is it more conversions, more website traffic, more offers, more lead generation? Whatever it is, it all has a root in storytelling. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, we started with this. We started with communication orally and telling stories long before we ever got to the written word. So what copywriters and marketers and neuromarketers look at are what are the ways we can kind of shut off the front part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. That's where our CEO lives, is right up here, right between the eyes. But where we really resonate with stories and when we process information, it truly hits a section of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is what's in charge of our fear response, our autonomic emotional response that drives us and pushes us forward. And you'll hear about this a lot within, IG influencers or, whoever these social media gurus out there are. They talk about, you got to tell a good story. Well, it's like, all right, that's great. Well, where the frick do we start with that? Right. So this is a challenge. This is how we have this set up. I'm going to go into this top part secondary, because I'm sure you guys have seen this. Once I start to break this down, you'll know exactly what I talk about. But if you listen to the podcast that I did with Corey and Julie, gosh, probably like 6 months ago now.
Not quite.
I know time kind of flies. We talked about the 6 human needs and how you can leverage that with different forms of content. So we're going to get into that first. I'm going to go over what really drives story. There's 7 different types of stories that bypass the front part of our brain and go straight to the emotional center. So this is where our purchasing happens. This is where our decision-making happens well before we resonate with it at the front part of our brain. So what happens is we connect emotionally with the story. And then we rationalize those feelings and those emotions with our thought leader up here. So this is really wrong, but more back between the temples is really what's driving a lot of this. So there's 6 human needs. There's certainty, uncertainty, significance, growth, contribution, and love and belonging. Each of them play a totally different role. And for different reasons, customers are going to come inside of your sphere. They're going to come inside of your business to fulfill one of those needs differently. You came to Julie and Corey because they fulfilled one of those needs or multiple of those needs for you. And all good marketing that accelerates out of that blah noise that we all hear all the time and we can smell the BS a mile away. All good marketing that elevates to great starts with understanding these 6 human needs. Because when our website, our social media accounts, and all the other places where our customers and other businesses can find out about us, it all starts with us fulfilling these for them. So when we look at these 6 human needs, we can actually multiply them by the different forms of content that are the most likely to resonate and go viral with people. And there's 3 types. We have entertainment, education, and impact. So looking at that, we broke down a basic kind of outline as to how you can start to think about these things. And this is the document that I shared with Julie. She'll be able to share this with you. And we gave a few prompt ideas over here as well, just to kind of give you some insight. And if you see things like David versus Goliath or the Challenger Step 2, they're just linked back to up here. So just you can scroll back up and check this out pretty quickly. But this is a great cheat sheet. And at the bottom of this, we also included a week-to-week kind of formula as to how you can use this. So, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and then rinse and repeat this through 3 times. So with this, there's a lot of information in here. I understand that, but just break it down piece by piece. And that's what I'm going to do real fast. And I'm sure you'll start to see as to how this actually fits into the business, because I'm sure you'll recognize, oh yeah, I totally bought into a product or service based off of one of these or multiple of these before. So the idea of certainty, this is what a lot of 2020 marketing was based around, because everybody outside in the world was losing their marbles, right? There was so much uncertainty. There was media throwing fake news all over the place, if you believe in that, right? And even with that, it provided a little bit of like, oh crap, like I need something stable. I need certainty that this product or service is going to deliver the result that I'm asking it for. If I order an 18-inch pepperoni pizza, I better get my 18-inch pepperoni pizza with certainty that I'm not going to get a small. And it better not have pineapple on it, right? There's certain areas that we need that certainty around. Within a business, if you're doing if Julie and Corey came to me for marketing and they said, I absolutely want to hire you because you need to get us so many leads, or if you're looking at a law firm, right? I'm hiring you with certainty that you are educated and know what to do. So that's certainty. I'm sure you've bought off of that before. I have. I've bought off of all of these, and I'll tell you which 2 I buy off of the most when we're done. There's also the need for uncertainty and novelty. So this is awesome. This is what like all great ice cream shops are based off of. This is what all great apparel brands really, really understand, is that little dopamine lever in our brain needs to be pulled a lot, especially with technology and how glued we are to our devices. We're constantly looking to fill our brain with new and novel things and ideas. Companies solve this too, right? They could be putting out the same product year over year, but they'll call it something different. It's because there's this new and novel idea that's coming into them that they just want to copy a little bit differently. So I'm sure a lot of you have purchased off of uncertainty or novelty before. Let's move into significance. This is one that's really interesting and one that you typically don't catch right away, but you'll notice it. And this goes for all the fake Instagram influencers out there. I like to give them the big middle finger as I talk about this, which is the idea of significance. People like to feel significant in their decisions to buy a product, and their decisions to go with a brand, and their decisions to even be educated by you. They want to feel significant. It's that very much like that ape chimp chest pounding exercise that so many of us do to flex our ego or to flex a status of some sort. Or, I wanted to get this purse or this. For me, it's guitars. Like I'll drop hella money on guitars because I understand that some of them have those new features, right? It's kind of feeling novelty. But at the end of the day, because I've been playing for so long, I like to have a piece of gear that reflects how long I've been playing and what my skill level is, right? So there's this idea of significance, right? Top chimp. top chimp status with that one. Then we have the idea of growth. Growth is massive. Julie was talking about First Form earlier, and they have mastered, I mean, totally mastered. If you want a master class in teaching and educating and inspiring and impacting an audience to grow, they have $50,000 transformational challenges that they run 4 times a year to help grow their audience, not from a volume perspective, but to pick them up from where they're at today and inspire them to grow and change inside of their life. Humans need change. It's uncomfortable. We may not like it, but on the other side of change, we all know, because we're entrepreneurs, is always a better spot. We're always trying to grow and evolve into the better versions of ourselves. What inside of your company is challenging your customers to grow in some way? The next one, contribution. We love to contribute. We love to feel good, to fill that significance spot, right? That top chimp status of, hey, I'm top dog. I'm providing value. I'm donating to a charity cause, right? It gives that top chimp status, and that feeds that ego mind. So with contribution, you see this a lot with companies like Tom's, where or Warby Parker, where, you buy a pair, they donate a pair. There's a contribution aspect to what they're doing. For us, we play very, very heavily inside the mental health space, because I understand how detrimental this technology is to our mental health. So there's an area of contribution. When you buy from us, we donate over to this charity or this mission or this cause. We're pulling people into our story. These are all heavily based in story as well. The last one, love and belonging. We all love to have a tribe. And we all know those brands that have suckered us in, because there's this sense of community. There's this sense of belonging. Hey, you're with us. You're on this journey. You belong to this tribe. And these go so deep, it bypasses the prefrontal cortex, that CEO part of the brain, and attacks the limbic system, the emotional side of the brain that doesn't process logic and reasoning. It processes emotions, the way we feel. And based off of this, we understand, hey, the typical form of how we process is emotions, and then actions, and then thoughts. That's how most people do it. They're called eaters in the psychology world. We process the emotion first, how it makes me feel. Then I take action, and then I think, was that action right? Instead of flipping it around where we should be, right? Logically, you would think, well, we would have the thought, then the emotion, then the action. We all know it doesn't work that way. It's why we have impulse purchases, right? So understanding that there's certain psychology around how we purchase and why we purchase, and that these formulas will allow you to elevate past that certain spot and really start to drive your content in new and creative ways. So this gets multiplied out, the 6 human needs, by 3 different pillars of content, like we talked about. Are you educating your customers? Are you entertaining them in some way, shape, or form? And are you impacting their life? Impact can be a multitude of different things. We see it with motivational videos, or the sad, or like the one that gets me every time is when the military soldier comes home and one of their loved ones has their back to them, right? And then they come running up and they give them a big old bear hug, and everybody's crying. They put the sad piano music behind it. That one gets me every single time, because it's an impactful video. They're touching on the love and belonging part through impact. So I'm sure as you start to see these, you'll notice the patterns over time when you look at what successful content looks like and how it can be applied inside of your business. So I gave you guys some prompts inside of here. Make sure you're dropping questions for Julie and Corey, and for me in there as well, as I go over the last part of this. But what makes a killer emotional story, right? There's 3 steps to this. Everybody overcomplicates it, but at the key to all emotional stories are 3 parts. There has to be heartache, then there's a change or somebody gets help, and then there's the happily ever after. But looking at that, there are different stories that are told through cultures and time that have never really gone away. And these date back 10,000 years. They are even depicted on the sides of different massive megalithic sculptures. These formats of stories have been around so long that they've become evolutionarily grained inside of our brain to process them. So these are the 7. And I'm sure when you start looking at all your marketing now, you're going to start saying the ones that are winning, the ones that are gaining the traction, the followers, the leads, the website visits, they're all following these in some way, shape, or form. We have the David versus Goliath story. This can be internal or external, right? I'm struggling. I'm internally, I feel like I'm David against the big Goliath of the hill that's in front of me. That's entrepreneurship, right? I have this internal struggle. I have the heartache. I find a way to overcome, and then I live my happily ever after. See how that forms that silver bullet emotional kill shot story format? Rags to riches, the slumdog millionaire story, right? Fits right inside of that. I'm sure you guys have heard of the hero's journey at some point. If not, there's an absolutely incredible book that walks through this called Building a Story Brand by one of my favorite marketers out there. His name's Donald Miller, but he walks through the hero's journey and he kind of gets into the Harmon story circle as well. There's a great YouTube video out there on that. Just type in Harmon story circle into YouTube. You'll find it. It's phenomenal. But the hero's journey, we see this in things like Star Wars. Even more so, I think of it within the Hunger Games series, right? That we as business owners or influencers or personal brands, we have to be their Hamish. We have to be the Yoda to their Luke Skywalker, the Hamish to their Katniss Everdeen, because we are not the center of their world. They are, right? I just talked about the idea that we need top chimp status for significance, right? If I flip that script and say, no, me as a business owner, I'm top chimp, our customers run away because we're not pulling them into a story that's already existing, right? We're trying to see where our products and our services fit into their daily habits and routines already, so we can resonate with them at a deeper level. We all tried to break a habit at one point in time in our life. It's not easy. It's super difficult to break a habit. And what I see a lot of brands and businesses do is they try to break habits of customers, right? Which is wrong. We need to figure out how our brand and our products and our services and our messaging and our social fit into the lives that they're already living, because it's easier to add something into somebody's life than it is to take something away. It's called loss aversion. It's a deep psychological principle and bias that we absolutely disgustingly hate as humans. Moving down, I know I'm blowing through quick because there's a lot in here, and I want to make sure I at least give you kind of the 10,000 foot view of this, so you can start using this document on your own and start using it to create better social media and better websites. We have the before and after, right? I had no choice but to take action. You'll hear this section of it inside of the hero's journey as well, which is they were called to action. They didn't have a choice. Luke Skywalker lost his home, right? And he had no choice but to go and join the rebels, to go and fight against the you know what I mean, right? He had no choice to go over there. The next one down is hindsight. This one is super powerful if you're in the business to business world of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, right? I can't believe I operated my business off of this old system and it didn't do it. It wasted money and cash flow and all this. We were wasting stuff, right? Now in hindsight, I'm using all these different systems that I'm learning and wow, look at the results, right? The before and after on that. The nightmare one is a really, really interesting one, and it goes well if you have an incredible story. Everybody has a story, right? And we all come from our own place of hell at different points in our life. So what's that nightmare where you almost bankrupt? Like me, I've had multiple near-death experiences, one of which I was knocked out for 2.5 minutes. So I can talk about some of these things. Or what was your aha moment that brought you out of the place of poverty from the slumdog millionaire to now you're moving into a state of long-term legacy wealth? What are those nightmare transition stories? And my absolute favorite out of this, which I don't see a lot of people do, but it's one of the most powerful, is the rebirth. It's the Phoenix story, right? We were soaring, we were great, we died down, and then we rose from the ashes even greater than where we started. These are some of the most common story types that are out there. And you'll notice across movies, TV shows, books, comic books, even good social media accounts and good websites talk about these stories for their customers in some way, shape, or form, because they understand that we have to bypass the front part of our brain that deals with all the logic and nonsense, and we need to connect with our customers on an emotional level. I know I'm cutting close on time because I want to give a bunch of it for Q&A at the end. So here's how we can start using this. I gave you guys what are called 2 steps inside of here. I'm sure you've seen them at some point in time on social media. And at first you were probably like, ugh, gross. I'm pretty sure it's why Corey quit social media too, is because of these, but that's a different story. So looking at this, right, we have it broken down by content style. So 2 steps mean I'm putting in a post, I'm calling my customers to do something. It's very much what's called permission-based marketing. I'm asking permission to then reach out to them, or to send them a DM, or to contact them in some way first. So I don't come off as spammy. I'm asking permission first and then delivering value, but I'm also delivering value in my post. There's a few different ways to do that. It could be like hey, drop the word attraction into the comments, or drop a share and tag somebody into this, right? I'm asking for multiple steps in order for them to get value back in return. So I've got these kind of broken down into different ways that you can do this. Please don't just like bare bones copy this and just flush it over. Get creative, use it. It's a format. It's a formula as to how you can start to stack these things. Same thing with the ones down here that I have for you as well. Let's see. I've got some engagement posts down here too as a little bit of a bonus. Engagement posts are great, sprinkling them in, especially if you can do these with video and get the video-based engagement going. It goes so far on social. But I want to take the next 30 minutes that we have and dive in deep to whatever questions you have, because I believe the best way I can possibly serve you tonight is just to answer questions and give you direct feedback and value. Does that sound good?
Yeah, definitely.
How was that? Was that some fire, Corey?
That was a lot to think of, for sure. So if anybody has any questions, drop them into the Q&A. Bill, I had a question for you, because you were talking, because I actually just read an article today about how I want to say it was like 30% of the people who responded to this survey said that if their employer required them to go back into the office, they wouldn't. And it's something that I think that we're all more accustomed to nowadays, is the, like, everything's remote, everything's digital. So for people who have employees across state lines, like outside of their state, you were talking about like, you need this type of coverage for your state. Do you need to consider other types of coverage for employees who might be working out of state?
Not really. I mean, so really what you're getting down to is two things. It's going to be workers' compensation or employment practices liability, which we covered briefly. Every state does have their own workers' compensation laws. They're typically about the same across the board. I mean, there's really no giant difference. There really isn't. You just have to abide by what the state laws actually are. And here's the thing. There are a couple of states out there that don't actually require by law for employers to have workers' compensation. But you're crazy not to have it. Because let's say that you decide you're not going to buy it. You're still required by law to pay for any injured person that you have working for you. So, I mean, there's really no difference. I mean, if you have people working out of state, that happens all the time. I mean, a lot of my clients are IT professionals. They have people all over the country. So as long as you abide by state laws, it's pretty much all the same.
So you just want to abide by your current state?
Yeah, wherever the company is actually
Okay.
domiciled is where the state that you have to follow, but you still have to be licensed in different states. But that's all back office stuff that I would have to deal with. I mean, you as the employer, it's really
Okay.
It would make a difference. Like you're still required by law to do the same things.
Gotcha. One of the other questions I had for you. So I remember because we had talked earlier last year about the business interruption, the continuity insurance, and how it did not include a pandemic because they had ruled that, like, gotten rid of that after the SARS thing back in the early 2000s or whatever. And I just wanted to, like, if you wouldn't mind, just talk about how important it is, like, knowing your insurance agent and being open about what you want coverage for.
First of all, any agent that you work with should be able to ask the correct questions in order to determine, what at least come up with ideas of what you're going to need. As far as, pandemic exposures and the fact that a lot of people didn't have insurance for this, nobody saw this coming. So the fact that nobody had insurance for it, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, right now you could buy volcano insurance. You honestly could, or earthquake insurance in Virginia, and it's extremely cheap. Nobody buys it because nobody expects it to happen. What I do think will happen after this is I wouldn't be surprised if Congress steps in. It does something similar to what they did after 9/11. They enacted something called TRIA, which is the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. And that mandates that all carriers have to include terrorism insurance within their policy. You can opt not to buy it, which is stupid. It's like $100. But I believe they're going to do something similar to this with business interruption insurance, because I mean, there are way too many businesses that were left with nothing.
Yeah.
But as far as, I mean, the second part of your question about working with somebody that will know your business, I mean, I talked about that a little bit. If you're working with the right person, they should know your industry and they should know the questions to ask to get you to the right point.
Okay. Thanks. Alex, I've got a question for you. So you covered a lot, and you talk, like you've got like, I mean, just crazy amount of like, experience and knowledge and whatnot. If I could only focus on one thing, if I was a new business starting up or whatever, if I can only focus on one thing, what would you suggest that be?
From a platform or from like a singular marketing point?
From marketing, yeah.
Build your tribe. Doesn't matter the platform, you can find them anywhere. Are there some platforms that have more of them than others? Absolutely. But I've helped multiple businesses scale past 6 figures without a website, without an email list, and they're just running their day on Facebook. And that they're able to scale their entire business that way. So I think with marketing, it's such a big umbrella term, right? That covers so many different elements of a business that what we miss at the end of it is it's all about the human connection. It's all about the way our customers relate back to us. But the number one thing I would highly encourage everybody to think about marketing as, so marketing is a game of memorization. It's a game of memorization between what my business is and does and who you are and how that resonates with you and what that story is. If we can start thinking about our marketing as how do we get our customers and our prospects and our people that are a warm audience or a cold audience to remember who we are and what we do, no matter what platform of the decade or flavor of the decade emerges for technology and media, they will always remember who you are and what you do. Julie will always remember that first form equals customer service. Just like you will always remember, Corey, that Verizon treated you like dog poo. You will always remember that because it's memorized into your brain. That story is embedded into your brain a lot more than, hey, I ended up saving $22 somewhere in my life.
So Alex, when people are first starting a business, do you have a recommended strategy or considerations they should take into account when they're trying to figure out where to start with like a social media platform, right? If they should be on Instagram versus Facebook or LinkedIn, is it based on kind of their ideal customer avatar, or what's your thoughts there?
You can start there, but it's not the easiest. The easiest place to start is where you're a best communicator. So let's say if Bill has a great camera presence, but let's say he's got the camera presence of a horse, right? Like we wouldn't start on video, right? But let's say he's an incredible writer, right? We're going to start on blogs. We're going to start with the writing process, or even on Facebook as the writing process. And then we'll work in those other things along the way. But the biggest obstacle is the fear of starting, right? It's the fear of what somebody's going to say because I'm trying something new. I'm starting in a new venture. I started a new business, right? They're all rah, rah, rah at the beginning for you when you start this. And then there's that dip of people like, oh, like he's still doing that thing, right? And now we're climbing back up that hill and we have to find that tribe, but they'll only resonate with you in a way that you're the best communicator, right? It took me a really long time to get comfortable on video. I'm fine on audio, but my body language and my camera presence was lacking. So I had to go out and learn from people that understood this stuff better so I could pick up those tools and acquire that knowledge. But that takes time. So for starting, we need to start with where our strengths are and then slowly adapt in the weaknesses to learn how to fill those holes.
That's a great response. And I think I want to ask a little bit about the using different mediums in your content or, when your marketing strategy, but I also just want to tell everybody, you guys, like these two are like experts in their areas and they've dropped a ton of knowledge. So I'm stunned that nobody has any questions regarding insurance or the digital marketing and the mix of neuroscience. So drop the questions in there. Let's get them answered while we have their full attention. But Alex, so should you use a variety of different mediums for marketing? You use video, written content, photos, like what are your thoughts there?
We've mixed it up entirely. So last year we added a podcast. We're working on getting video up and running, but for a while we just did really well with photos and text. And we were able to grow our business for 3 years just using photos and text. It allowed me to get good as a copywriter. It allowed me to train my clients better as copywriters. And then moving into that, I said, okay, well, now we understand story format. Now we understand how to bridge these gaps that are a lot easier for me as a communicator. Now I need to start acquiring the skill set, finding the leaders in that field to help me achieve those next levels. So we said, hey, we're going to take the next year to year and a half to conquer voice. And then once we move from voice, then we're going to go after video, because I know that it's a game of just perseverance and consistency, right? Nielsen came out at the end of 2019 and gave us really interesting stats about podcasting, and that out of everybody that starts a podcast, 90% of them stop by episode 13. So if you can get to episode 14, you're already in the top 10% of podcasts. Same thing with video, right? If you want, I think their research said like 20 videos across all social media channels, get to video 21 and you're in the top 10%. So it's just a game of how long can you stay in the fight with these types of content and telling the same story to new people, not new stories to old people.
Yeah. And go ahead, Julie.
I tell people when they're interested in starting a podcast to record 15 episodes before they release one.
Yeah.
For that very reason.
I tell people don't start a podcast.
I'm with Corey on that one. I have to agree, sir.
No, that's just a joke there. Yeah. I mean, it like for us, it's definitely been a struggle, just trying to build it. And we've learned a lot along the way. And, I think that we finally got to a point where for BizQuick, it's almost like clinical, where we record and we can just we have it all like kind of worked out where we can get what we want, out there without having to put too much extra thought into it, because we did all the work ahead of time. Bill, I wanted to go back to you. So with claims, like when would you is there like a formula or something, like in terms of like when it would make more sense to just pay out of pocket versus like, hitting up your insurance company to try and cover a claim?
Really good question. And I'll talk a little bit about claims. There's one thing I did want to bring up. You asked me a question previously about, insurance stuff from state to state. Again, that's within the states. There are a few things you have to look out for, nothing major. The big one is if you're doing work internationally, specifically if you're doing federal contract work on foreign soil. There's some, and this is anybody out there that's doing it. There is a federal law. It's called Dba Defense Base Act. And you don't have to be on a base. It doesn't matter. Like if you're on foreign soil and you're doing work for the federal government, you're required by law to buy it. If you don't buy it, it's a class 1 misdemeanor. It's a $10,000 fine and a year imprisonment. So that's the one big one to look out for. I mean, international work, and that's a different story altogether. As far as claims go, I mean, when it's time to make a claim, you can pay out of pocket. I mean, that's why you have deductibles. Like, so if you've got, a lot of cases for professional liability, you have a $10,000 deductible. So if it's less than $10,000, pay for it. If it's beyond that, go ahead and make an insurance claim, but it depends on how much, that's not really up to the business. It depends on how much liquidity they have. So if you're sitting on a bunch of cash and you don't want to make a claim, go ahead and pay for it. One claim is not going to ruin you. One major one possibly could. What really does ruin people is when you have a series of small claims. So if you've got 15 little tiny claims that are at the process of a year, carriers will walk away because I know that these are all little ones, but that just means that there's There's a pattern, and the next one could be the big one. The other thing is, this is really my philosophy. If something does happen, notify your broker first before you notify the carrier. That's my job to handle the claims process. If it's something piddly that it's not going to make a difference, I will tell my clients, go ahead and call the carrier. I mean, this is easy. They'll take care of it. If it's something more major, I want to be involved because I want to coach them on what to say. I can't break any rules or laws, but coach them on exactly how to handle it. Because if they miss a step in the process, that's a way for a carrier to walk away from a claim. You have to inform people, though. This is another great example. There's well, actually, it was one of my clients. This lady, she was wearing open-toed shoes and scratched the top of her foot going up the stairs at work. Little tiny abrasion. Nobody made a workers' comp claim. Nobody informed anybody because it was just a little abrasion. That turned into MRSA. Oof. And that became a very big issue. And we had to fight tooth and nail because you have to notify the carrier within a certain period of time. So I guess it really goes back to keep your broker informed as to what's going on, because those little tiny things can blow up and become a major issue down the road.
Yeah, and that's great advice. The universe, for whatever reason, hates my truck, and it has been
it does
rear-ended and hit and damaged more than, and like I'm not even in there. It's just like random parking lot. I walked out of a restaurant and someone saw somebody just rear end my truck and then drive away. So like every time that happens, I mean, like it's not my fault. But I called my insurance company and be like, hey, just let you know this happened. They're like, okay, cool. We'll take care of it. So great advice. We've got a question for Alex from Carol. What is your tip for a beginner at marketing?
Ooh, that's a really open question, isn't it? As far as a tip, I mean, I guess my biggest tip is what I said earlier. Marketing is a game of memorization. So figure out what type of way you can tell a story, what type of fun and engaging ways you can interact with your customers or your clients. That's a game of memorization for them. Okay. Just let them get to know you. Don't put up the fake business BS of, that top chimp status, right? Let them know who you are, where you're at, because more often than not, what happens is a lot of business owners try to overflex who they are and what they've accomplished. And it backfires because a lot of consumers love the underdog story, right? One of the stories that was in the 7 stories in there was the Slumdog story. You can't have part of that story. You can't have the hero's journey. You can't have all these key starting blocks of a good story for your business and for your brand if you don't start in an authentic and real place. So that would be my one tip. Make it a game of memorization, but make it a true game of memorization about who you really are and where you're at.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Alex, is it possible, like how likely is it for you to be able to grow a successful business if you don't do any marketing at all?
Practically impossible. I mean, we all got to let people know who we are, and our circle of influence is only so big, right? I think there's that Dunbar's number that it states like if we didn't, and this is pre-social media that they figured this out, that we can really only hold about 150 people inside of our tribe. Could you make a decent living off of 150 people that know you? Well, we say maybe 2 or 3 of them, or let's say high, maybe 20 of them could use your product. Out of the 20 that could actually use it, what's your conversion rate on it? Is it 50% of that? Well, that's 10 out of 150. So you're batting pretty low averages. That better be a really high ticket item that everybody needs inside of that group, or you better have another strategy of serving.
I want to, sorry, Julie, did you have something?
I was just gonna say thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to get back on that in a second, but we got a couple of questions from the group. So for Bill, what is the most common insurance miss you see small business owners make?
Insurance miss?
Yeah.
God, I mean, there's myriad. There's one that I just talked about. I mean, it's just shop on the bottom line. One of the biggest issues that we have is all of marketing. Sorry, marketing guy, we're going to make fun of you for a minute.
That's all right. I make fun of me too.
I self-deprecate quite a bit as well. If you look at TV, we'll save you 15%. We'll save you. So what, advertising and marketing has done is commoditized insurance. It's not a commodity. Like I said, the only thing that really is workers' comp. Everything else, it's all up for interpretation. So when you're shopping the bottom line, you're really setting yourself up to, quite possibly fail later on. The other one, and I mentioned this as well, like if there's some glaring exclusion, and that's why insurance policies become more inexpensive, is when the carrier takes a really important piece of it and throws it out the window. At that point, it saves money. But then whenever you have a claim, like you could be facing bankruptcy. It really comes down to that. It's really
Okay.
shopping the bottom line, giant exclusions.
Next question for you. What sort of coverage would you recommend for a solopreneur that has no brick and mortar, no actual like physical product, business that's truly just online and mobile?
Okay. It sounds like it's probably e-commerce, or
it's like let's just call it like coaching consulting.
okay. At that point, you're providing a professional service. So a professional liability, that's going to be the most important thing that you can have. You're going to be required at some point to have the other stuff that I talked about. Professional liability is going to be the most important thing that you could carry, because if something does happen, you're going to be sued for some sort of a financial damage. So if you, for example, if you coach me and say, this is what you should do with your business, it'll make you a bunch of money. And then all of a sudden I follow your direction and my business goes under, I'm probably going to sue you. And that's your professional service. That would be the first one to look at.
Okay. Alex, for you, we got a two-parter. So statistically, which social media platforms are generating the best results for new businesses, and why do you think that is?
Yeah. So I need to know what the business is and who the audience is.
So her business is a copywriting business?
So professional services.
Yeah.
Professional
LinkedIn.
services. Okay.
And then was there a why attached
Yeah, and why?
to that? It's the context of the platform. Could you do well on a platform like Facebook? Absolutely. Would TikTok be the way for you to go? Probably not. Look at the audience set that's on those platforms, right? And look at why we go onto those platforms. If I'm going onto LinkedIn, there's certain things I want to see, right? I don't want to see you and your dog playing out in the backyard. It's just not the context of the platform. On Facebook, you can get away with that. And you can tell a really compelling story. When we started off in our business and when I was learning good copywriting, where I got really good at it was Facebook, because there really isn't a character limit and people are already kind of used to the idea of these longer posts on there. So I could go in and really work that system a lot better. There's also, as you probably know, there's amazing copywriting groups on Facebook. But for LinkedIn, there's not a lot of high volume of copywriters on there. A lot of them stay on Facebook because they feel like that's where they've kind of nested their home, but they weren't willing to make a shift. LinkedIn has an incredible organic reach still. It's not what it was a few months ago, but it still is really high. So you have the ability to get seen by more people. One of the keys for LinkedIn that I would recommend is that you use 3 to 5 hashtags with your copywriting business. Make one of them yours and the other 2 based around, hey, small businesses, or hey, funnel, or hey, email automation, right? Figure out what are those other ways where copywriters are going to be needed, plug them back into your world. And then with those hashtags as well to kind of piggyback on that as to how to kind of hack this a little bit more. Before you go in and post that on LinkedIn, whatever hashtags you're going to use, go in and engage in those hashtags for about 5 to 7 minutes, come back, post it. And then once you've posted your post, go back into the hashtags you used and engage for another 2 to 3 minutes. It shows LinkedIn's algorithm, hey, I'm engaged, I'm in there, I'm active. So I'm not just posting it and then bouncing off your platform. I'm here to engage and kind of build up the attention within that platform. You'll skyrocket on LinkedIn right now from that.
That's a great hack.
Is there any service, any social media, anything that's like that's new that people might want to jump on?
Let's do it, Alex. Let's do it.
Julie, Julie, should we open up this can of worms?
Let's do it. It's the best thing out there.
I'm glad you knew where I was going with that question.
Clubhouse.
Coming, but I'm gonna make this real clear. Don't hit me up for invites. I have 0. They all went to my clients. But yeah, it's totally Clubhouse for the reason of it's everything that all the social media platforms that are out there right now are not. But it was interesting. I got caught up into a Gary Vee chat 2 days ago, and we were talking a little bit about business strategy. And one of the things that we were talking about is, does this mimic what Twitter was back in the early days of Twitter? And what we were talking about is there's this Goldilocks zone with all digital platforms where we have the early adopters who are kind of testing it out. They hit or miss off of volume. And then there's this really big spike of the first real wave of adopters. And what's amazing about Clubhouse is that when it first started out about 6 months ago in May, when you had people like Kevin Hart, The Rock, Gary Vee, Andy Frisella, Ed Milet all jumped into this, they kind of had this Silicon Valley feel, and they said it was really antagonistic and really like pessimistic too. So a lot of the Silicon Valley members dropped off that high tech, and then the entrepreneur field picked it up over the month of December. And the big wave across entrepreneurship is gratitude, value, inspiration, right? So all these really positive rooms and topics and conversations are happening. Today, I was in a room with Les Brown and listening to him tell stories about how he's doing, how he's living his life. And I wouldn't be able to get this level of access or information from people like that unless I'm paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 an hour, let alone to go and see him at a conference where I'm traveling and doing all this other stuff, right? Tony Robbins hopped in last week into the same group that I was talking about for Les Brown, and he dropped an hour-long seminar on unleashing the power within. Once again, you wouldn't be able to get this level of access unless you're going to attend a UWP event or UPW.
It's Clubhouse is amazing. For those of you who don't know, it is, I would say it's the single best tool available for entrepreneurs right now. Unfortunately, it's only available for iPhone right now. And I don't know when Android's coming out. It's invite only. And it's an amazing tool. You get in these rooms and you can talk. I sit in, my favorite room to go in is a room that runs every day at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. That's called 7-Figure Sales.
7-Figure Sales, baby.
I have learned more in that room than anything you can imagine. In fact, I just launched a new marketing tool because of that room, Alex. Bomb, which is incredible, but it's an entrepreneur's dream, like a small business owner's dream, to be on Clubhouse, because there's so much opportunity to learn. You just got to be careful because it's a little addictive. So
it's called Crack House for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be somebody's business partner on this call,
I wonder who you could be talking about.
You've heard about Clubhouse way too much, but I don't have an iPhone, so I can't.
It's going to cause more divorces than anything.
So the good news is that I can take a hint really well, so I can stop talking about it in total. And I have some name drops that I could drop too for people whose rooms I was in and chatting with, but not Les Brown, but I just end up in some weird rooms, but it's really good. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's grown my Instagram account like wildfire over the last few weeks. It's new. It's great because it's a passive form of media, right? I don't have to be watching it like I do a YouTube video or reading it like I do a Facebook or Instagram post. I can consume it in the background while I'm working on other things. Even if I'm moderating a room and I've got 10 other moderators in there with me, somebody else is wanting to talk, right? And one of the biggest things I've learned out of Clubhouse is I just sit back and shut up until somebody calls on me. And then it makes me look better too, because they're like, oh, hey, he's the expert and I know he's going to drop some fire knowledge on this. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting back and letting everybody else, once again, going back to the 6 human needs, feel that level of significance. I'm top chimp. I'm running a room, right? Let them feel that ego. Let them sit in there, because that's part of a marketing strategy for you.
Yep, absolutely. My strategy for it has been if I want to learn, I go into a room that's really, really crowded and I just, hang in the cut and listen. And if I want to add value, demonstrate my knowledge and expertise, then I go into a smaller room or I host a room myself.
That's awesome.
All
Yeah,
right. Any
and-
final questions? We did not circle back to the no marketing and how a business could survive.
Good luck.
Which you said you wanted to talk about, Corey. Go back to.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to ask. Don't know. Yeah, I got no questions on my end. And nothing in the Q&A. Unless we have anything else, I think that's a wrap for this evening.
Well, thanks, Bill and Alex. We appreciate you guys coming on tonight.
Yep.
Thank you all very much. It's been fun.
Yes, thank you. Feel free to find me on Instagram or Clubhouse. We're constantly dropping more marketing bombs on there as well.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.